If you're a doctor, how much of your day is spent just fighting with paperwork instead of actually focusing on your patients? Well, today we are mapping out a real, practical 90-day journey to change all that. This isn't some sci-fi fantasy about the future. Nope. This is a real plan using AI tools that exist right now to conquer that mountain of admin work and get you your time back for what really matters, caring for people. I want a conversational prose mosaic. This quote from a physician really gets to the heart of the problem with electronic medical records. Doctors don't want to just be data entry clerks, ticking off rigid boxes. They want to capture a patient's story, the real narrative as it unfolds. It's this very human desire to see the whole picture in a world that keeps breaking it into tiny, disconnected pieces. And that frustration, it's fueling a full-blown crisis. Physician burnout from administrative overload is hitting an all-time high. So it really forces us to ask the big question. For doctors who feel like they're drowning in paperwork, can AI be the lifeline? Not to replace them, but to be the tool that finally pulls them out from under that crush of clerical work. Let's find out. All right, so our journey starts right where the clock gets eaten up the most for so many doctors. Patient intake and writing the clinical note. This is where the patient story begins, and you know what? It's the first place AI can make a truly massive difference. And just look at this transformation. On the left, you've got that typical EMR output. It's a cold, sterile, disjointed list of data points. But on the right, that's the prose mosaic we were just talking about. AI helps weave all that data into a coherent story that actually makes sense. It captures the nuance and turns a flat data file back into a human chart that breathes. So how do you actually do this? Well, the answer is in a whole new generation of tools. You've got platforms like Infermedica that can handle that initial patient chat, asking smart follow-up questions before you even walk into the room. Then you have a voice-first scribe, something like Suki AI, that just listens to your natural conversation and drafts that beautiful prose note for you. And even the big players, like Epic, are getting in on the action with their own integrated tools. And the impact. It is absolutely staggering. We're not talking about a small little improvement here. One doctor who brought in a voice-powered AI scribe cut their charting time from a grueling 20 minutes per patient down to just 3. That is an 85% reduction. Just stop and think for a second about what that adds up to over a whole day of appointments. It's huge. Okay, so once we've perfected the clinical note, we can move on to the second part of our journey, automating all the other admin work. Because AI's impact goes way beyond just writing notes. It can tackle that entire mountain of tasks that bogs down a practice, from summarizing old records to optimizing billing. Just think about this super common scenario, right? A new patient walks in and hands you a 60-page medical history from their last doctor. Manually slogging through that can take a physician nearly an hour. An AI tool, on the other hand, can digest all of it, labs, pathology, you name it, and spit out an accurate, concise summary in about 2 minutes. 45 minutes versus 2. It's a no-brainer. Of course, this means having the right tools in your toolkit. For those really complex record summaries, you've got platforms like Wisedocs. And then for the money side of things, tools like Nudge AI can analyze your new prose note and instantly suggest the correct billing codes. It can even point out when a few more details in your note could justify a higher reimbursement. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds great, but how does a small practice, one without a massive IT department, get all these different apps to actually talk to each other? That fear of creating a messy, disjointed system is totally valid. Well, the answer is a technology called Robotic Process Automation, or RPA. The best way to think of it is like a little software bot, a digital assistant that you can teach to do all the boring, repetitive stuff. It can copy data from one app and paste it into another, just like a person would, but it does it instantly and with 0 errors. It's basically the super glue that holds your entire AI toolkit together. So here's what that actually looks like in practice. The RPA bot sees you've finished your note in Suki. It automatically copies that text, zips over and pastes it into Nudge AI for the coding analysis, copies the suggested billing code, and then enters that code directly into your EMR for you. No clicking, no manual copy-pasting, no human error. It's just one seamless, completely automated workflow. Okay, we've seen all the individual pieces of the puzzle. Now, let's put them together into a clear, actionable plan. This is the 90-day blueprint to totally transform your practice. So the plan breaks down into 3 very manageable 30-day phases. In that first month, you just focus on nailing down patient intake. In the second month, you roll out the AI scribe and the coding tools. And then in the final month, you integrate the record summaries and use that RPA magic to tie it all together. This phased approach keeps it from being overwhelming and lets you build momentum. And here's a quick summary of the full toolkit for your 90-day plan. It lays out each tool, what it's for, and about what it'll cost you per year. And you'll see it's actually a surprisingly manageable investment, even for a small practice. The total investment for that first year comes out to around $12,000 for all the software. But what about training? Is it this massive headache? Not at all. It's minimal. We're talking maybe a handful of hours for your staff, not weeks. Like 2 afternoons total to get everybody up to speed. This is not some massive, disruptive overhaul. So, what's the return on that investment? Well, most practices can expect to break even in about 9 to 18 months. When you start adding up the huge savings in staff time and the increased revenue from much more accurate billing, the system really does pay for itself pretty quickly. And finally, once you have this foundation in place, you haven't just solved today's problems. You've actually built a practice that is ready for the next level of automation. You're now future ready. And that next frontier, oh, it's a big one. Automating those dreaded insurance pre-authorizations. Using that same RPA framework we talked about, tools like EasyPA.ai can take patient data, log into the insurance company portals, and submit requests for MRIs or surgeries all by themselves. It's a true game changer that can turn days of waiting and phone calls into just minutes of processing. Which brings us right back to where we started. The goal of all this technology isn't to replace a doctor's judgment or their empathy. Of course not. It's to get rid of the noise, the friction, the administrative drudgery that just gets in the way. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. AI won't replace a great doctor, but for the first time, could it finally free them to truly be one?